Hello and welcome to the Farm.One podcast. My name is Rob Lang. I'm the CEO and founder of Farm.One. And Farm.One is a vertical farm in New York City. Vertical farming means we're growing things in a hydroponic system, which you can see behind me. We're using artificial light, and we're actually in a basement in Tribeca in Manhattan. And this is our first farm. This is a farm we've been operating for 4 years or so, and we're about to actually build a bigger facility in Brooklyn on the same lines. And we grow all kinds of rare and unusual herbs and greens, but mainly we focus on a weekly subscription service that we offer to New York City residents, where we deliver baby greens and microgreens and herbs and flowers on a weekly basis with no disposable packaging. We use reusable containers. And that's just one of the things that we care about. We care about New York food and sustainable living and nutrition and all the things that we can do as a food company to improve the sustainability of the food ecosystem. And one of the things we do on our podcast is we try to uncover stories behind our food system and agriculture. And for the entire month of April, which is Earth Month, we're going to be talking to different people who have different things to say about sustainability and who are doing things to push forward sustainability, especially around food, agriculture, and all that kind of thing. So if you like this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe or sign up to our newsletter on the website, and you can get more stories like this. And today I'm really excited because I'm joined today by Ashwin Gopi. He's from Rise Products. And Rise Products is a company that's kind of changing the meaning of food waste. And so they work with people like brewers in the New York City area, and they use byproducts of the brewing process to make things like brewers' spent grain, which we'll find out all about, and giving products new life to create flour and other treats. And so they're creating a path for like a whole new industry, which is about using the products that are coming out of other systems and turning them into valuable products. So I'm really excited to talk to Ash today. Hey Ash, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel like I'm on a farm on a sunny day.
Yeah, well, you are on a farm.
Yeah.
It is also sunny,
Yeah.
but artificial
Yeah.
light, Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a farm like this, a hydroponic farm?
Definitely. A few in Brooklyn, also mushroom farms.
Great. And so let's start with kind of introductions. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about Rise Products.
Sure. Yeah. So, like a lot of ideological people, originally I was a mechanical engineer. That's what I did as an undergrad, and that's what I worked as for a while. Before I really became interested in this relationship between people and technology. And in order to kind of like ask those kind of questions, that's how I came here to the US, in 2010. And I was a part of the NYU Engineering School, where I was studying technology management, which is kind of that kind of topic about how do you, include technology into everyday life and into like integrate it into society meaningfully. And as I was asking myself those kind of questions, I also met like-minded people who also believed in the same kind of things that we do, specifically that technology development, technology, the way it is made to be accessible. The main kind of questions we need to ask is accessible to whom and what is the cost. And because we were kind of grappling with these kind of questions, we found this online platform, for social innovation, where people were asking these similar kind of questions, and there were organizations supporting initiatives in sustainability and in social justice. So we participated in this online platform, and we met our teammates there. And what happened is we initially wanted to start this online platform where you could buy and sell waste, basically a marketplace, an online marketplace for waste products. And we started doing our research, and we really focused on Brooklyn as a case study because that's where we're from, and we really want to give back to our community, literally where we were located. And what we did is we did a study on the kind of waste that is produced in Brooklyn, both industrial waste and domestic waste. And what we found out a lot is that, a lot of the paper, plastic, glass, metal, all that had some sort of second or third life, hopefully, ideally. And there already was infrastructure and a marketplace to deal with those kind of wastes. So we started, when we started doing this research, we found that actually a lot of the waste from New York City is dumped in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, as far as Virginia, right? And so we went to one of these landfills, and we were following these trucks from Brooklyn, and we were, seeing what they're dumping out. And what we discovered there is this, it's literally finding treasure in trash, is that we found this truck dumping this very homogeneous organic product, into the landfill. And we asked him where it was from, and he said breweries. And so we went to breweries in Brooklyn, and we asked them about their process of how they make beer. And that's when we found out that there is this, we first of all we learned how beer was made, and it's very interesting. A beer is just, you can make it in a cave, and people have been making it in caves for a long time.
Yeah.
It's that simple, it's just barley, water, hops, and yeast. And what happens is the barley it's not just barley, it's harvested barley that has been malted, where it has been germinated, and then at a certain step, when the starches have been converted into sugar, you kill the germination with heat. You knock off the shoots, and then you roast it, and depending on how deep you roast it, you get different kind of flavors. And what happens is barley is not just sugar. Barley is a lot of things. It also has protein. It also has fiber, and it also has a lot of very interesting minerals. And when we studied like the beer making process, we found that only the sugar was being extracted from the barley, leaving behind this byproduct of just like this protein fiber mass, very wet boiled barley, basically, that they didn't have any other option but to literally throw it into bins which would be collected, and they had to pay, I think, about like up to 28 cents per pound to get it hauled away by private haulers, because in New York City, commercial businesses have to use commercial waste transport. So they were paying to get this thrown away, and we collected samples of it. We studied it in a lab, and we found that it was it was like nutritious, and B, it was clean. It was really clean. It's just boiled barley, and filtered. So it's very good and homogeneous and valuable source of nutrition. And we were just throwing it away. So instead, what we did is we started collecting. The first thing we did, like I imagine how our ancestors would have approached new foods as they traveled across different lands. Someone had to have eaten it and tested it on themselves, and that's how we developed these. We have an understanding of which plants are edible, and so that's what we did. We just ate it. We ate it for straight a month for one meal a day, just to see what it would do, and we survived. And it was tasty, it was healthy. So what we started doing is we started figuring out, okay, what we need. But here's the thing, because it's so healthy and nutritious, it spoils really quickly. Like bacteria love it, insects, maybe birds, whatever, it's really nutritious. So it's a great place for bacterial growth. So what really needed to be done is convert it, either collect it and move it immediately, within a 6-hour window, or we have to dehydrate it and turn it into a more shelf-stable product. So we started doing both in the beginning, and we still do the wet transport, sometimes depending on whether, if a restaurant needs it, for instance. But most of what we do is we collect the spent grains from breweries. We take it to our facility, which is, used to be in Brooklyn, and now it's moved upstate and into Texas. And what we do there is we dehydrate the grains using a very gentle infrared dehydrating system, which doesn't harm mainly the protein. You don't want to damage the protein. So it's a gentle dehydration, process which uses like infrared heating and air conveyance in order to remove moisture. And then what we do is we turn it into a flour, that we can then sell to bakers, chefs, and food manufacturers. We really want it to be able to be a part of people's staple food. So that's our goal. It's not to try to make it into like a specialty product. Our goal is to turn it into like a commodity, turning waste
Yeah.
into a commodity where, yeah, it can be, it can find its way to the most amount of people as possible. And
That's
so that's what
amazing.
we've been
That's an
working on.
amazing
Yeah.
process that you've gone through. And I feel like it's a sort of engineering mindset, which is like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to look at what is an output and can I turn that into something valuable? Are you aware,
Yes.
were you inspired by other processes that you had seen around the world where they're taking a waste product and turn it into something new? Or is this a brand new technique that you invented?
No, not at all. In fact, this process, it already it exists. It's just a reproduction of something that currently exists. We were really inspired by this, by two things. Okay, one is this philosophy called industrial symbiosis, which emerges from ecological studies and specifically industrial ecology. Where people were trying to adopt ideas from nature to run institutions. And one of those ideas is that that waste the waste of one industry can turn into the raw material of another. And that idea really was what drove us to. It's funny. Originally, we started out as an online platform. Now we make flour and bread. I think I don't know. I find that it's a sort of like materialization process, where something like a vague concept, like a philosophy, was able to be turned into a product. We were also, we're all whatever. We're all like, communist sympathizers or whatever, but, we read a lot of Kropotkin in college. So, the conquest of bread is what we're trying to do, but, use it for equity, but also for sustainability at the same time. And we were also really inspired by the pet food industry. The pet food industry is the foundation upon which, any sort of profit is derived in the meat industry. Most of meat they just break even on meat, the farmers. Where they really, make some profit off is like selling the byproducts of the meat industry, which turns into pet food. So that was very inspiring. Also in the food industry, like whey protein is an upcycled product as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, give us a sense of the potential scale of something like this. If you take a small brewery, how much of this brewer's spent grain are they maybe producing, and how might that look if we captured a lot of that product nationwide?
Yeah. Okay. Here's the thing. Okay, it's going to be a little shocking, but for just a six pack produces 1 pound of spent grain.
Wow.
So that's just one six pack. Something that you could buy and drink with your friend in a day. That's 1 pound. And a brewery, even the smallest brewery, let's take a 5-barrel brewery, right? A barrel being like whatever, like 32 gallons. A 5-barrel brewery, every time it produces about 1,000 pounds of spent grain. About 800 pounds maybe, depending on the kind of beer. How strong the beer is going to be. So the stronger the beer, the more spent grain it produces. So, for instance, your lighter beers produce much lesser. But think about this: just in the craft industry, only in the U.S. is 4.2 million tons a year.
Wow.
That's enough nutrition to feed the entire population of South America, for a year.
That's an incredible amount of potential product and energy and nutrition. And right now, you're saying most of this just gets disposed of and ends up in a landfill or compost or something like that?
Yeah, so that's certainly like a unique challenge of New York City, I feel, because in other places it does turn into animal feed, and again, the problem being there, it's not being collected and, upcycled fast enough, but it's good enough for animal feed, and so it's used for that. This is a problem of urban breweries specifically, I think urban breweries are the one who face this main challenge of like just having no other option, with no farmers willing to pay the toll to come into New York City to pick up the grain.
Like, they don't actually need to change their process. All they need to do is kind of give you the byproduct, and that's it. Do you end up buying it from them, or are they just happy to dispose of it with you for free? How does that sort of transaction work?
That's how it works. We just pick it up from them, for free, free on both sides. And the only thing they need to change is the way they collect the spent grain out of the mash tun is where the barley is being boiled. So the way you collect out of it should be done in a food grade manner.
Okay, okay. Yeah, tell us like what happens next. So you take the product, you're doing a process to it which sounds relatively simple, dehydrating it and making
Yeah.
sure that it's sanitary and that kind of thing. And then how does it turn into a final product that a consumer might see on the shelves?
Yeah, so most of our products actually go directly to businesses, and it turns into a lot of different products. Our customers make everything from bread, pizza dough. It goes into a breading of a fish stick product, like fish sticks. Ideally, somebody once asked me like, how would you want to get your flour to people, and one way is through bread, but we don't want to be, for instance, like in a high-end supermarket. We would rather our product be in Popeyes chicken as the breading, as an ingredient in the breading. That's ideally like how we would, yeah. So if
Yeah.
Popeyes is watching this right now, that's how we want to go about. But yeah, right now it turns into a lot of like baked products, and really the reason that a lot of our customers buy our product is not even the fact that it's upcycled or sustainable, maybe because it's related to beer, but mainly it's about the flavor. That's what they really like. It's a very interesting flavor that it doesn't exist really, in the natural ingredient space.
Yeah, can you describe that flavor a little bit for people? What might that be like? Yeah.
Yeah, it tastes. You know what it tastes like? It tastes toasted. It tastes a little bit like toasted biscuits. It tastes a little bit nutty. It smells. It smells like shortbread, a little bit.
Okay. That sounds really nice to me. It sounds great, you know?
It's warm, it's very warm and familiar, surprisingly, despite being something that people really don't eat. But it's just toasted barley.
Yeah, yeah. And so give us an idea, you've been around for a little while now. Who's on your team and what does the company look like that you've created right now?
So we have a lot of different people on our team. Um, I don't want to talk about like roles and stuff because that gets really confusing. But we are a team, and so we are a team of engineers. We have about 3 engineers on our team. We have 2 chefs on our team, because we constantly believe that, in addition to selling the products, we also do a lot of research, and we also do a lot of consulting with companies and product development. And so we have like chefs. We have a food scientist because we realized at one point that, hey, we need food people. We are not, we were all mechanical engineers, and also we have a designer on our team as well, who I think it's very important because, earlier you said that we take like an engineering based approach. We also take like a human centric approach to studying these ecosystem, and this kind of human centered process is what actually led us to this idea of the product of flour. It was, yeah, based on the material nature, but of the material, but it was based on what people needed. It's the kind of ingredient that bakers and food manufacturers were comfortable with and comfortable using. And so, really by working with it, we're a multidisciplinary team, but we also rely a lot on people in the community to help us. There are a lot of scientists,
Yeah.
all over the country who have contributed to this project.
Yeah.
There are people who have funded, given us grants. Also, we have to say like NYU has helped a lot. And so we are, for instance, we participate in the NYU entrepreneurship, program, where we have people helping us do new projects throughout the year as well.
Amazing. And so, and do you have like a big processing facility, or do you outsource that side of things?
Yeah, so exactly. So we used to do it ourselves in Brooklyn, but then we realized that, we developed the process to a point where we were able to adopt it. So we now outsource the manufacturing to Texas, so that we do it in Texas now. And we collect and do it there, and also but mainly also in upstate New York.
Right. Okay. And so,
Yeah.
what are your dreams for the company then? If you think of the next 5 years, what do you hope to achieve?
definitely. I think that we want to go in two different ways. One is we want to definitely start turning this into more like, like we have ideas for trying to get this flour directly to people through a retail product. But at the same time, we also want to start working with other byproducts. There's so much waste out there. It's not just about spent grain. We want to start working with the byproducts of soy milk. We have started already working with the byproducts of cold pressed oil. So we're talking about peanut oil, um, sesame oil, and coconut oil, and the byproducts of them are extremely rich in protein. So this flour right here is 20 up to like 28% protein, and with the peanut oil, the cold pressed peanut oil byproduct, it's 50%. It's 50% protein. So it's an incredible source of protein, and we want to use it somehow to address childhood malnutrition. Where the main nutrient that is missing is access to good and complete protein, especially which is important for mental development, for development of the brain, and so finding a way to commercialize that product, but also donate that product. So that's another thing we do is we donate our flour a lot to different institutions throughout the city, and finding a way, maybe ideally to maybe to work with the New York City School Department and include it in children's diets.
Okay. And you're funded right now. It sounds like you've had some grants, you've maybe had some investment. What's the funding situation of the company?
So right now, we were originally, we have got some grants, and we were also originally, we were accepted into the FoodX program. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, from SOSV. And it was an accelerator program, and what it really helped us do in the beginning was help us understand the food industry. So we got investment from them. We also have some angel investors. But other than that, a lot of the company is right now, we are, like last year we made a profit, not a big one, but it was, we are, so we are trying to be self-sufficient right now, and we're trying to grow the company and more importantly, grow sales. And we have some very interesting projects coming up, where we're working with much larger brewers. So all of this time we've been working with craft brewers, but soon we're going to start working with sourcing spent grain from macro brewers. And we're talking about beer that you buy in your grocery store.
Amazing. There's some really big brewers out there in the US, so I think you've got some great target relationships to go for. That's awesome. And so when I think about your story and what you do, it makes me think about the idea of the circular economy. And I think that one of the harder things for some people to imagine is they can get their head around the circular economy with engineering materials like plastics or metals or things like that. But it's harder for people to understand how it works for food. How do you define the circular economy?
So there are so many different applications for food byproducts. And so I think that finding the most valuable use for it is what we should be always working towards. For instance, as I said, there are different applications even for spent grain. It can turn into paper, it can turn into construction material, it can turn into pet food, but the most valuable application for it is through, is for feeding people. And I think that's what the circular economy in the food industry requires, is this underlying assumption of equity, where we already know the food system, how it is, right? Like 40% of everything we grow is wasted. And at the same time, people go hungry. So what we have, the problem that the circular economy can address is bridging that gap. And that gap has to be bridged, and this may be a little bit controversial, I don't know how to say this, but only in and around, around or outside of capitalism, right? So capitalism is the barrier that prevents this meeting of this, the efficient distribution of food and any other raw material to people who require it. and to find a way to work around it, by doing things that may go against your traditional notions of you know uh, financial responsibility of
Yeah.
to your shareholders,
Right.
but really to be able to take a stance and work on the circular economy from the assumption of redistribution.
Right.
I
Right.
think redistribution should be the underlying notion of the circular economy in the food industry.
And you've talked, I think, in other places about industrial symbiosis. Can you explain that term?
Yeah. So think about, I mean, there's so many beautiful plants here, but some of them, they grow with other organisms. They require other organisms. They require bacteria. They require worms. Here, in this case, these plants require humans. You have a symbiotic relationship with these plants. So it's really taking that sort of like organic perspective and like ecological perspective on institutions as well. So even looking at institutions as being actors in an ecosystem, which need resources, but more importantly need other actors. And thinking about industries in the same way, where we feel like we are a sort of like a symbiotic parasite, a beneficial parasite, on the beer industry, and we suck their waste and we transform it into something valuable with which we can feed our species.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I really like that approach, and I think that, I mean, it's an example of looking to nature for inspiration as well, right?
Yes.
And I guess, the other thing that I've thought about is that, you've talked about this being more of an urban issue than something that affects
Yes.
brewers who are, have a lot of land around them or a lot of access to animal agriculture. There's also a sense that we may be trying to keep nutrients within New York City, if you know what I mean. Can you describe some of those effects? Like, one of the things that New York City does is we consume a lot from a long way away. We bring in food from California, Arizona, from Europe, we consume it.
Yes.
And then our waste essentially sometimes gets put in a landfill or it gets sent out to sea. How do you sort of feel about trying to keep nutrients within a city?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, right, I would like to have a facility, not even a facility. I would like to like miniaturize technology. So this is what our long-term goal is to miniaturize technology to the point where each brewer self-sufficiently can produce their own spent grain flour, in their own facility, and doing it on their premises is the most efficient way of doing it. Okay, so ideally the barley would be grown here. There are people who grow hops. In New York City, we use New York water. So there are brewers in Brooklyn who use grains that are only grown in the state of New York. All ingredients grown in the state of New York, including the barley being both grown and malted in the state of New York. But the spent grain, definitely, ideally, we would like to process that spent grain in New York City, and do it hyper locally, source locally, and do it right here, and be able to make enough to sufficiently to feed people in New York.
Yeah.
That would be the most ideal closed loop system.
Yeah, we're as a company, we're inspired by folks like you. There's a company called Renewable, which I don't know if you know, but they turn food waste into hydroponic nutrients. There's a company we came across recently
Tinia.
called Tinia, called Chop Value, which turns used chopsticks into chopping boards and this kind of thing. Are there other companies that you're inspired by in this circular economy space, in the industrial symbiosis space?
Oh yeah, there are so many. I mean, there's this furniture company. I really forget the name. It's a French furniture company. Just Google French furniture spent grain. They use spent grain to press it, right, and they turn it into bar stools. I think that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, we are also There are also, like, by the way, like, I can just keep going on just with examples with spent grain. There are so many people who do so many things with spent grain.
Yeah.
There is like a self-sustainable community in Oakland, California, for instance, where they use spent grain to feed chicken, and then they to grow chicken, and then they grow. They also have a hydroponic system like this, where they use spent grain as a base for growing mushrooms. There are people who use spent grain for turning directly into snack products. In California, a few of them, which I really like. Brewers Crackers, they are local, they are in New York State. They use Brewers spent grain to make snacks. Yeah, so there's just so much out there,
Awesome.
and also there's also the Upcycled Food Association, where you get to be a part of a community of people who are trying to do just exactly very similar things as what we're doing. And so, they all are also believers in the same
Okay.
philosophy.
Amazing. And so, like, let's say if I was in college right now and I'm inspired by the story of rice products and industrial symbiosis and the circular economy, what's the best way to kind of get into this industry, or are there areas where you think someone really needs to work on this, where someone should go into that area to move this industry forward?
Yeah, so I think, okay, if you are in college listening to this right now, as much as possible, try to take a few design courses, because I think that's what a lot of industries require right now when it comes to sustainability, is creativity. And there are a lot of companies out there who are trying to do very similar things. Large companies who are now hiring more and more people, in the sustainability industry. Really, I think the main skills that you also need to develop is data. First of all, data discipline, data literacy, and communication. I think that's really what the projects, that a lot of the time when you're working on these kind of sustainability related projects, you're in the middle of people, very different people, and you're trying to get them to talk to each other, and get information from one person and transform it into a meaningful insight for somebody else. Like talking to a farmer, a scientist, a truck driver, and a food processor simultaneously, in order to make just one piece of this puzzle work, right? So it really requires those kind of skills. Also, getting yourself familiarized with some sort of like a little bit of like basic science, at least, so that you can start understanding how sustainability is measured and communicated in organizations. Is pretty important. What do you measure? How do you measure? And how do you communicate the insights that you get from the data that you collect? Because I believe that sustainability is, the actual impact that you produce, but at the same time, it's also the narrative. And the narrative is not something that you use for for marketing or for sales or something, but the narrative is what shapes internally the philosophy of the company. You need to tell a story to yourself. And so I think that's another skill that you really need in doing these kind of projects, is that ability to tell stories. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, consumers and other businesses now, every year, are getting more conscious of who do they work with, who are they buying from, and what does that company really represent. And I think it's becoming clear that you can't just say we're sustainable. That's not going to cut it much longer.
No.
How do you kind of make sure within your own company that you're following all the principles that you want to?
I think we try to use sustainability in trying to incorporate it into different parts of the business. Everything from we are constantly trying to move to sustainable. So, like, one of the things that we haven't done yet is move to sustainable packaging. What we do use is reusable containers, for collecting and transporting the spent grain. But packaging is such a challenge, to have because here's the thing. I was on the subway today. I was thinking something funny, that you move Farm.One, you move leaves, and I move powder,
Yeah.
and powder is, I don't know if for the ones who understand what I'm trying to say, powder is moved differently. than leaves, and so it's a challenge. It's really a challenge. We are still stuck to plastic because um, we do use sustainable packaging when it comes to bulk, but I'm talking about retail products. Retail products moving from plastic is just so challenging. We
Yeah.
haven't cracked that yet. Our trucks still use gas. We haven't moved to electricity yet. But I think what is more important is the process itself. Uh, you know, um, I think making that as sustainable as possible, preventing, like for instance, the process, the output is a little bit of heat, of course, but it's also water, you know, and so trying to find a way to like capture that water and reuse it, maybe,
Yeah.
so really, it's about taking like an engineering perspective when it comes to efficiency. It's more about efficiency and equity than it is about sustainability itself.
Yeah.
Sustainability is a byproduct.
And so, if you look at American industry as a whole, and I don't know if you've looked into Biden's new infrastructure plan, spending a lot of money on improving American infrastructure. What are some things that you might think are really obvious improvements that most companies in America should make to become more sustainable?
That's a good question. Well, I'll answer that in two things. What should companies do and what the government should do? You know, um, what companies should do is um, I think that it's more than company. Okay. I'm going to go one level underneath that. I'm going to go directly talk to the founders. As founders, sometimes what you need to do is you need to stand up towards venture capitalists. That is the where we derive a lot of our assumptions about how a company should be run and which direction, how you make decisions. A lot of the time that is shaped by venture capitalists. And in order to stand up to them or move towards a crowdfunding method to raise capital, or find more like creative ways and accepting money from people who already believe in the same ideology as you do,
Yeah.
of sustainability and equity is important. And so, or even if you've taken money from venture capitalists, try to push back. They're human too, you know. At some point, you need to, you have to pay the price for standing up to, sticking to your principles, and be ready to pay that price when you're asked of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what companies should do. Governments, on the other hand, I'll tell directly to President Biden is that reinvest in urban manufacturing. Manufacturing is controversial. A lot of people don't want manufacturing in their backyard, but perhaps there is a way to support industries where, for instance, they do not produce, like our process does not produce a lot of pollution. It's electric, and on top of that, the output is water. So maybe finding a way to pair up with other helping companies pair with each other. And you know what, more than that, be more proactive. Be really proactive and try to build circular economy, planned economy a little bit here in this country. People are very afraid of that here. This idea of the government telling companies how to run, but it does need coordination. The government can act as a coordinator between businesses, helping them co-locate, really giving them help in co-location, turning unused space or like new manufacturing space that they're building specifically for green companies, but make them go through like a selection process where the byproduct of each can lead into the raw material of another. That's a planned economy as well. But you shouldn't be afraid of it, when especially it's done for the purpose of trying to be as sustainable as possible. So that's the two main things I would say.
Very cool, very cool. And I'm curious, as someone who's running a company that's all about sustainability, what are some things that you do in your own life when you're buying food or when you're choosing materials or clothes or things like that? Are there some things that you do that are all about sustainability that others might want to follow?
Definitely, For clothing, we buy clothing from people we know, and a lot of the clothing we buy is from India and from Ecuador, and that's where we are. It's easier to find sustainably grown cotton there, especially indigenous forms of cotton. Before Monsanto took over the cotton trade, and we can also find not just sustainably made but also equitably distributed. Clothing made by people who get fair wages. So I don't know, there are a few companies like that in India. I don't know if I should. Am I allowed to say their names here?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, it's okay. Anoki in India is a pretty good company.
Yeah.
And also right here in New York City, Zero Waste Daniel. Zero Waste Daniel is really cool. By the way, an upcycling company turns fabric waste into clothes.
Very cool.
Yeah, so right here in New York City. So Zero Waste Daniel. We buy a lot of food from farmers markets. And here's the secret, by the way. If you qualify for food stamps, right? And this is a big problem. I think really it's about access. It's really funny that most farmers markets are located where people who buy the food don't need food stamps, and where people need food stamps, farmer markets are not usually easily accessible.
Yeah.
But if you use your money in a farmers market, you can turn your $40 into $55 through a voucher program, through Grow NY, through Grow New York program. Unfortunately, I don't qualify for food stamps, but if I did, that's what I would do. Really go and use it, spend it in farmers markets where you sometimes you can directly ask the farmers. Sometimes I don't even know some of the plants that they grow, and I have to ask them. But making that accessible, making that sort of set, because by the way, I think farmers markets in New York City is kind of coordinated by the city government. And so, really allowing farmers to have accessibility to people in neighborhoods, where majority of people have food stamps.
It's been amazing talking to you, Ashwin. If people are interested in what you're doing at Rise or other things, how can they find out more?
Definitely. Check out our website, riceproducts.co. Follow us all social media, Rice Products Co. And buy our products, I guess, or ask more importantly, this is the thing. I don't want to make people feel guilty, and that's the thing we're trying to shift away. This recent idea that we've been working on is culturally, how do we shift away from blaming individual people to be sustainable, but rather how do you collectively, organize to hold, large corporations accountable. Start with your small local businesses. Ask them, how sustainable their ingredients are, and then support them. Buy from them at the same time. So I think talk to your local any bakers out there, or if you know any bakers, just write to us, and we might even ship you a free sample and try it out.
Amazing. That's really a great message. I've really enjoyed talking to you today, Ash, and the whole mission of Rise Products and the engineering approach you have is so inspiring. So thanks everybody for tuning in this week. Be sure to subscribe to stay tuned on the upcoming episodes for Earth Month. Pretty soon we're going to be diving into the secrets of grocery stores as well, which is a fascinating topic. And we'll have all kinds of other podcast guests coming soon. So thank you so much. I've been Rob Lang. This is Farm.One. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.